drag that into Photoshop. Now, this is really going to be a trial and error process, seeing what we can do. Some of the things will be very simple. Some will be trial and error. Does this look good? No. Does that look better? So I don't know whether a lot of people who make renders or content creators on their images, there's a plugin made for raw photographs in Photoshop called Camera Raw Filter. And it's very, very powerful. So we're going to load her into that. So she's now in Camera Raw. And this does everything, gives us a histogram and everything. And this is your basic panel here, which you can set all your normal things like your color temperature, your exposure. Now with a raw photographic image, you can actually change the exposure, like the camera exposure. So say you took a photograph that was underexposed or overexposed, you can really compensate it with a raw digital photograph by using this software. You can get it to where it should be. That's what this is actually designed for. It's designed for raw digital photographs.
Not so much for PNGs, but for the stuff that comes out of the digital camera or from a scanner, with like a raw file that you can't really look at. You have to put it through Photoshop and then turn it into a developed JPEG or developed PNG, right?
Exactly. So you have the basic, all the basic stuff here. There's some very interesting stuff which I will get into in a minute here. You can change the curves of the highlights and shadows and the darks and the lights.
See, I never knew this. You could actually use it on a regular PNG image from stuff that you already have. That's very interesting.
Yeah, maybe there's a lot of people who don't realize who use Photoshop.
How did you get there again? Before,
how did I get to Camera Raw?
Yes.
Filter.
A filter.
Camera Raw filter.
Dang,
it's right at the top. It's about third or fourth one down.
It's a filter. They're hiding things in the filter menu. Crazy stuff. Thank you. That's actually surprising. I didn't know. I knew that when you open one, when you have a raw image and you open that in Photoshop or with Photoshop, then this menu comes up. I didn't know you could get there. How exciting.
Yeah. So you can do all sorts of things with this. You can obviously, you're sharpening, noise reduction. I'll go into the noise reduction later. That's very, very useful for Daz renders. Color mixer, you got your hue, saturation. You can change the luminance of the hue, which is really nice.
Before you even start putting layers on it and maybe doing color balance as a layer, how exciting! This is dynamite stuff, Colm. I had no idea.
Yeah, you can change the optics. If it was too wide or something like that, you can change that. So if you were shooting with a wide angle lens on a camera, or your perspective was too wide in Daz, you can help compensate for it with this. Basic effects like grain, film grain.
And vignette too, unvignette as well. That's cool. You can reverse vignette if you had a vignette that you want to get rid of. Nice.
So these are all the basic things, but this is only the basic part of it. So getting into the nuts and bolts of what we're going to do, the first thing I usually do is I go to simple route, press the auto button.
That is simple.
Yeah. So press the auto button. Does that look better or does that look better? I think it looks better with the auto. But we're not going to use the auto. I'll tell you why we're not going to use the auto is because I want to show people what the dials do.
Yes, let's do that. Let's have a look at the dials. I like it.
Now, the first thing I would do, I would change the color temperature slightly. I think it's too warm for a misty forest early in the morning. It should be a bit more blue, I would say, the light. I would enhance the blacks in the image. Give it a little bit more punch.
This is the equivalent of doing crush blacks in the tone mapper, if you're familiar with that. That's what that does. It basically takes the knee and just makes it a bit harder on the bottom.
But again, this is non-destructive, where the tone mapper is destructive.
Is destructive, yes.
Yeah. Now, bear in mind, this is only the basic setup that we're using at the moment. We're going to go into more detail with this plugin. There's a lot more it can do than all of this. So I'm going to bring down the highlights a bit just to bring out that background. You see that background is starting to show a little bit more
So
the trees in the distance.
When you had it on 0, it's almost like the HDRI was a little bit on the blown out side, as if it's lost some details.
Exactly.
And the moment you bring that back, you can literally see trees reappearing in the distance there. So it's like,
it's almost like a raw camera image where the detail is actually still there, and that's what you would do with this plugin. But it seems like there's still a lot of detail in the PNG image. Now, I'm just going to bump up the vibrance a little bit now. That this is going to make her a little bit more yellow. So let's have a look at just bring that temperature down a bit.
Instead of saturation. Say something more about that. What's the difference between the two?
I think it takes the individual hues and colors, and it enhances them as a part from the overall image. So if I take that off, see, that's enhancing the color of the whole image. Whereas if I use the vibrance, it's only enhancing the color of the image.
It's different colors, actually. I think saturation just increases the whole spectrum. It just makes everything more saturated. Whereas vibrance favors the blues and the greens and not the skin tone so much. So vibrance is this magic where the sky comes out, the water comes out, but the skin still looks very healthy.
Now, clarity here is a good one.
What does that do?
Clarity, that gives it a lot of oomph.
Oh.
So I'll just max it out. And then bring it back down, and I would give it something like that. It just gives it that little bit more punch. Now, we lose a little bit of shadow detail with that, but I'll bring that in later. The clarity. There's the clarity off.
Yes.
There it is at about 34 plus 34. So the next thing I want to do is show you this texture slider. This is one of my favorites, actually. So we zoom into the face. Can you see that okay?
Wow. Yeah, absolutely.
So
the detail. Wow, yes. I forgot we actually made a 3000 by 3900 render. So it's kind of now seeing it zoomed in, I'm thinking, whoa, the detail. I wasn't aware we had it. So
there actually is something I've forgotten to put into the renderer just set up for you, and that is I used a specular light for the eyes. But what we can do is she has some specularity in her eyes already, and I'll just enhance that later in post-work. But this texture slider really brings out the detail. Can you see that? If I take it down all the way, that's soft.
It's almost like...
I know what you're going to say, yeah.
Image sharpening, but a better version of it somehow. I don't know how it works.
Exactly, yeah. So I'm going to put it at about plus 35, I think. So without it, it's very subtle, but it makes a huge difference, I think. Look down at the rest of the image there. The detail
that's a good idea.
Actually
like on the linen there.
I can swap between the original. There's the original. And there's the so far enhanced version. So we go down to, there's the enhanced version. There's the original. This is just with the basic sliders.
Okay, that's quite amazing, huh?
Yeah, it really makes a huge difference.